The 2010s are now firmly in the rear view mirror. Sure, a lot of us would probably like to go back given what 2020 has thrown our way, and while that's unlikely from a physical standpoint, we can still review and look over what happened during the past 10 years. That is exactly what we'll be doing at the Touchback today as we look at the craziest running back performances of the 2010s. Some of these are crazy good, others are crazy bad, so we're just gonna jump right into it. We start at the beginning of the decade in 2010 with one of the NFL's true one-season wonders, Peyton Hillis. Firstly, it's incredible to think that it's been 10 years, over 10 years, since Hillis had his Cinderella season and ended up being on the cover of Madden. From a statistical standpoint, Hillis' season isn't all that crazy. He had a good season, over 1,100 yards. It's how he ended up in the role that makes this season crazy. Peyton Hillis went in as the Browns' backup running back. He was backing up some dude named Jerome Harrison, who I had no recollection of being an NFL player. Anyway, week 1 and 2, they share carries. Hillis actually had a 2-fumble game in week 1. Week 3, Harrison misses week 3. Hillis takes over the role, rushes for 144 yards. He just takes off. Harrison ends up getting traded. Hillis dominates the rest of the season. The Madden cover comes, and you sort of know the rest of the story from here. But that 2010 season for Peyton Hillis was definitely one of the craziest running back seasons in the 2010s. 2011's up next, and we're looking at Maurice Jones-Drew. These are good numbers, but what makes this MJD season so crazy is the consistency. Jones-Drew had 85 rushing yards or more in all but one game in 2011. This is something, and you'll see in the next season we pick, that is impossible to duplicate in almost any other circumstance. But man, week in and week out, MJD was just producing on the ground. That kind of consistency is crazy in and of itself. This ended up being the last 1,000-yard season of Maurice Jones-Drew's career, but he really went out with a bang in 2011. 2012, Adrian Peterson, what a bonkers season he had. You're probably well aware of this story, so there's not a lot we're going to say about it. The one point that we need to double back on is the Maurice Jones-Drew 85 yards or more rushing in a game. So MJD, 15 games with 85 or more rushing yards. Adrian Peterson only had 13 games with 85 or more rushing yards. So I think that also shows just how crazy MJD's 2011 season is. But really, nothing tops AP in 2012. Sandwiched between two of the most outstanding running back seasons of all time is Rashard Mendenhall in 2013, who was crazy ineffective. For some reason, Bruce Arians gave Mendenhall 217 carries, and all Mendenhall had to show for it was 687 yards with a particularly uninspiring 3.2 yards per carry. This is just a wildly bad season. None of this makes sense. I don't know why Mendenhall kept getting the ball. I don't know why Bruce Arians kept running with Mendenhall, but this is just a bad season. And it's crazy to think about that Mendenhall played 15 games, that he was allowed to have this season with the Arizona Cardinals in 2013. In 2014, the Dallas Cowboys seemed hell-bent on running DeMarco Murray into the ground, giving him 392 carries. Only two players have had more carries in the 2000s. They were Eddie George in 2000 with 403 carries, as well as Larry Johnson with 416 carries. However, DeMarco Murray managed to get more yards on the ground than either of those two running backs, highlighting the craziness of this season. When you think about just where the NFL is trending today versus where it was in 2014, it's highly unlikely any running back is ever going to get near this number of carries that DeMarco Murray had. But yeah, the 4.7 yards per carry is a great number, almost 2,000 yards on the ground, and that almost 400 carry total was freaking amazing from DeMarco Murray. in 2014. By 2015, Alfred Morris was already on the downside of his career. He wasn't particularly effective. He had about 3.7 yards per carry in 2015. The numbers themselves aren't crazy. It is what I'm about to tell you that makes this season so wild. Morris had 202 carries. His backup, Matt Jones, had another 144 carries. So they combined for 346 carries, and they only managed a ridiculous 4 touchdowns. The leading rushing touchdown getter in Washington that season was Kirk Cousins, who had 5 touchdowns on 26 carries. Morris, super ineffective in 2015, only had 1 touchdown despite getting 200 plus carries. This is just sort of a weird outlier performance that is kind of crazy if you think about it. As far as scoring touchdowns goes, the season LeGarrette Blount had in 2016 was the complete opposite of Alfred Morris's 2015 campaign. However, their effectiveness between the 20s was arguably the same. LeGarrette Blount only had 3.9 yards a carry for the Patriots in 2016. Unlike Morris, who was completely allergic to the end zone, LeGarrette Blount pounded in 18 touchdowns for the Pats, leading the team by far in that category. In fact, second on the list was Martellus Bennett, who only had 7 touchdowns. The 2016 Patriots were not the offensive juggernaut that some Bill Belichick teams have been in the past. As for Blount, this was by far and away the most memorable performance of his career. He never had more than 7 touchdowns in any other season. He only had 1 other season with more than 1,000-yard rushing. And yeah, Belichick had a plan to run Blount a lot, and they did it, and it worked for New England in 2016. After winning the Super Bowl in 2016 behind the efforts of LeGarrette Blount, the Patriots would be introduced to the next guy on our list, Kareem Hunt, who had a crazy 2017. And really, it all started in Week 1, Chiefs at New England. He rushed for 148 yards in that game, caught 5 passes for another 98 yards. It was his introduction to the NFL. He led the league in rushing. Kareem Hunt in 2017 ended up being a sign of things not to come because of his off-the-field issues, but what a rookie campaign Hunt had. 2018 saw another rookie put up a crazy season. This time, it was from Philip Lindsay of the Denver Broncos. Lindsay notably went undrafted in the 2018 draft, signed with the Broncos, came in the minicamp, came in the training camp, put in some outstanding performances. No one really expected much of Lindsay going into the season because the Broncos had drafted Royce Freeman in the 3rd round. However, Denver just could not keep Lindsay off the field. He would end up finishing the season with more than 1,000 yards rushing, 9 touchdowns, and putting together arguably the best season from an undrafted rookie in NFL history. We're going to wrap things up with Leonard Fournette in 2019. The former LSU Tiger had a breakout season of sorts on the ground, rushing for 1,152 yards. However, he was not big in scoring touchdowns. Despite the 265 carries and the 76 catches, he only scored 3 touchdowns, and 2 of those came in 1 game. Fournette's season was best exemplified by that 81-yard rush against the Denver Broncos where he got stopped short of the goal line. Just a odd season when you look at his overall body of work, and that someone had more than 300 touches and yet couldn't score more than 3 times. Fournette's season in 2019, that was a crazy season that needed to be mentioned on this list. That does it for our look at the craziest running back seasons in the 2010s. Like, subscribe, you know the drill there. Why don't you tell us what seasons we missed in the comment section below? And until next time, don't forget, hashtag take it out to the 25.